What if Tanjiro had Sukuna's abilities from the start? Now, if you guys haven't already, you have to watch What If Tanjiro Had Gojo's Abilities, because that's probably one of my favorite videos I've made in a long time. Now, Sukuna's abilities are a lot different from Gojo's. He still has things like reverse curse technique, but instead of overwhelming raw power like Gojo, Sukuna's fighting style is much more strategic. He wins fights by adapting to his opponents, finding weaknesses, and using his techniques at the perfect time. So let's get into the timeline. Everything basically starts the same because I don't want to change the story too much. Tanjiro goes out to sell coal, comes back, finds his family, takes Nezuko, fights Giyu, and Giyu tells him to go train with Urokodaki. This is where Tanjiro first starts discovering Sukuna's abilities. While learning water breathing, he also starts learning reverse curse techniques so he can heal himself. He practices cleave and dismantle alongside his swordsmanship. Now, cleave and dismantle can't kill demons by themselves because they're not Nichiren blades, but they're still incredibly useful. Since the attacks are invisible, demons can't really see them coming, making them perfect for creating openings before Tanjiro finishes them off with his sword. Now, you guys got really mad at me in the last video because Tanjiro never used domain expansion during the Sundown Countdown arc, and honestly, you guys were right, there wasn't really a reason for him not to use it. So this time, I'll make sure he actually does. Now, another one of Sukuna's strongest abilities is Furnace. It's an insanely destructive fire technique that Sukuna can only use after meeting certain conditions. It creates a massive explosion that can wipe out huge areas. Because it's so powerful, Tanjiro doesn't even try using it while training. He decides to save it until he's absolutely forced to use it in a real battle. So after finishing his training, everything else basically stays the same. Tanjiro passes final selection, defeats the hand demon, starts traveling with Nezuko, meets Zenitsu and Inosuke, defeats all the demons from season 1, and eventually arrives at Mount Natagumo. And this is the first time Tanjiro is finally forced to use Sukuna's abilities in a real fight. Now with that, Tanjiro runs into the other demon slayers, being controlled by the spider demon's threads. This fight is much easier. Instead of throwing Inosuke into the air so he can cut all the threads, Tanjiro just uses cleave or dismantle to slice through them instantly. He doesn't even have to get close. Since he can control how much output he puts into the attack, he can cut exactly what he wants without hurting the other demon slayers. Then he goes after the mother spider demon. Normally, she keeps everyone back with her threads, but that doesn't work this time. Tanjiro simply uses cleave and dismantle to cut through every thread in his way and quickly defeats her. Now we get to the father spider demon. And I totally forgot about Zenitsu. His part stays exactly the same. He's still scared to climb the mountain, gets separated from everyone else, and later defeats the spider demon with thunder breathing. Now we get to Tanjiro and Inosuke versus the father spider demon. This fight is pretty different, but it still ends the same way. Tanjiro can't really use any large-scale abilities because Inosuke is right there beside him. The father spider demon is still too physically strong, and Tanjiro ends up getting blasted away by a huge log that sends him crashing toward Rui. Now Tanjiro finally starts fighting Rui. This battle changes a lot. Instead of trying to cut through Rui's threads with just water breathing, Tanjiro starts using cleave and dismantle. Just like Sukuna, he uses the slashes to destroy everything coming at him. Even Rui's blood demon art, which strengthens his threads, can't get through because Tanjiro keeps slicing them apart before they ever reach him. That means Nezuko stays safe while Tanjiro holds Rui off. The only problem is that Tanjiro still isn't strong enough to defeat Rui by himself. So instead of unlocking sun breathing here, he simply survives long enough for Giyu and Shinobu to arrive. Shinobu heals Zenitsu while Giyu steps in to fight Rui. From there, everything basically happens the same. Rui is defeated, the demon slayers survive with fewer injuries, and Tanjiro never awakens sun breathing during the Mount Natagumo arc. That awakening gets pushed back to a later point in the timeline, which is actually pretty soon. The Hashira meeting still happens, and it plays out almost exactly like the original timeline. The only difference is that Tanjiro isn't nearly as injured this time, so when Sanemi attacks him, Tanjiro is actually able to fight back a little. Other than that, everything stays the same. Ubuyashiki explains the situation to the Hashira, and Giyu and Urokodaki vouch for Tanjiro and Nezuko. Since Tanjiro isn't badly injured, he never has to stay at Shinobu's mansion. Instead, he goes right back to training. Around this time, Rengoku is preparing for his mission on the Mugen Train. Since Rengoku has experienced training people like Mitsuri and even his younger brother, he starts giving Tanjiro pointers on his swordsmanship and breathing techniques. The two spend a lot of time talking, and Tanjiro notices that the way Rengoku talks about breathing styles sounds really similar to how his father used to talk about the Hinokami Kagura dance. Before Tanjiro gets the chance to ask if Rengoku knows anything about sun breathing, Rengoku has to leave for his mission, so Tanjiro decides to follow him onto the Mugen Train so he can ask him later. The whole trio boards the train, and everything basically happens the same. The only real difference is during the fight against Lower Moon One, Tanjiro Tanjiro starts using cleave and dismantle to cut through Enmu's attacks much more easily, making the fight a little faster. The train still derails, and then Upper Moon 3 arrives. Now this fight is a lot different from the Gojo timeline. With Gojo's abilities, Tanjiro could jump into the fight without worrying about hitting Rengoku, because Infinity, Blue, and Red are much easier to control around allies. But with Sukuna's abilities, cleave and dismantle are way too dangerous to use while Rengoku is fighting Akaza up close. And before you guys ask why Tanjiro doesn't use Furnace, it's simply too destructive. It would probably hit Rengoku too, so Tanjiro mostly stays back and looks for an opening. Then when Rengoku finally gets badly injured, Tanjiro immediately runs over and starts using Reverse Curse technique. We've already seen Sukuna use Reverse Curse technique to save Megumi during the Shibuya arc, so Tanjiro is able to use that same ability here. Akaza still escapes before sunrise, but this time Rengoku survives. Tanjiro successfully heals his injuries before it's too late. After that, they all return to the Demon Slayer Corps. Rengoku tells the Hashira what it was like fighting an Upper Moon, and everyone realizes just how dangerous Muzan's strongest demons really are. From there, Tanjiro continues training and preparing for the Entertainment District arc. I'm gonna skip most of the dialogue because they still dress up as girls, still find Upper Moon 6, and Tanjiro starts fighting Daki one-on-one. This time, Tanjiro has a much easier time. Since he uses cleave and dismantle to cut through all of Daki's Obisashas, she can't really overwhelm him like she did in the original timeline. He still defeats Daki, but it's way easier. He doesn't run out of breath, but here's the big difference. Tanjiro is surrounded by even more civilians, so he can't use any of his really destructive abilities. Then Gyutaro finally appears. This changes things. Tengen, Zenitsu, and Inosuke arrive a little sooner since Daki was defeated much faster and had to bring out Gyutaro earlier. From there, everything basically plays out the same until the final battle. Now we get to the moment where Gyutaro unleashes that massive attack that destroys the whole city. When everybody is down, Tanjiro finally decides it's time. He uses Sukuna's fire technique, catching Gyutaro completely off guard because he never expected Tanjiro to have an attack like that. Then using Reverse Curse technique, Tanjiro heals Tengen's arm, heals Zenitsu, and heals Inosuke, so they can immediately get back into the fight, catching everyone by surprise. This time, even when Tanjiro gets stabbed through the chin with Gyutaro's sickle, he keeps fighting because he instantly heals himself with Reverse Curse technique. The poison doesn't really become a problem because Tanjiro can continuously heal the damage. With Tengen never being taken out by the poison, and Zenitsu and Inosuke staying in fighting condition, they're able to fight at full strength and finally defeat Upper Moon 6. Because of that, Nezuko never has to use her blood demon art to cure everyone. Tanjiro still ends up needing a new sword though, since that part of the story doesn't really change. And with that, we move on to the Swordsmith Village arc. Now, if you guys haven't already subscribed by now, you definitely should, because only 7.2% of you guys are subscribed. If you guys want more timelines like this and don't want to miss any future uploads, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell because we're gonna have a lot more interesting Demon Slayer timelines. We're also trying to hit 50,000 subscribers, so every subscription really helps. Now, let's get back into it. Tanjiro heads to the Swordsmith Village, where he still meets Mitsuri, Muichiro, and Genya. He also still trains with the Yorichi doll, but now I'm going to skip ahead to when Muichiro gets blasted away by Upper Moon 5. This time, Tanjiro tells Genya and Nezuko to stay back. Of course, Genya doesn't listen, so Tanjiro has to make sure they're safe before telling them to go after the main body while he deals with the emotion clones himself. Using cleave, dismantle, reverse curse technique, and Sukuna's fire technique when he has an opening, Tanjiro is able to hold off all 4 emotion clones by himself, while Genya and Nezuko search for the real body. The problem is they can't finish it. Genya isn't strong enough to cut the main body down, and eventually the 4 emotion clones combine into their final form to fight Tanjiro. Now they're all stuck. Genya and Nezuko aren't strong enough to fight the final clone, and Tanjiro can't leave because nobody else can hold it off. Meanwhile, Muichiro still fights Upper Moon 5, unlocks his Demon Slayer mark, defeats him, and gets his new sword. At the same time, Mitsuri protects the village and eventually arrives to help Tanjiro. Tanjiro tells Mitsuri, "I have this one." Trusting her, he sends Mitsuri, Genya, and Nezuko to take care of the main body. Nezuko still becomes immune to sunlight. Genya helps out like he did in the original story, and Mitsuri finally cuts down the main body, ending Upper Moon 4 once and for all. That wraps up the Swordsmith Village arc. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention this earlier, Tanjiro actually awakened his Demon Slayer mark back in the Entertainment District arc. Sorry, I forgot to say that, but that's also how Muichiro awakens his own Demon Slayer mark here. Now we get to the Hashira training arc. Everything basically happens the same, except Muichiro and Rengoku switch training roles. Since Rengoku has much more experience teaching people different breathing styles, he takes over Muchiro's training section. That also gives Muchiro more time to recover and train himself, making him even stronger for the final battle. Other than that, the Hashira training arc stays exactly the same. The Ubuyashiki family head sacrifices himself for the Demon Slayer Corps. Muzan survives the explosion, and everyone is pulled into the Infinity Castle, beginning the Infinity Castle arc. So with Tanjiro training all of Sukuna's abilities, he's much stronger and a lot faster than he was in the original timeline, but that still doesn't help the Demon Slayers as much during the Infinity Castle arc because Sukuna doesn't have Gojo's teleportation, so Tanjiro can't instantly travel around the battlefield helping everyone. Because of that, he stays with Giyu to fight Upper Moon 3. The rest of the matchups stay exactly the same. Zenitsu still fights Kaigaku and wins with 7th form. Mitsuri, Obanai, and Yushiro still fight Nakime, the Biwa woman, to take over the Infinity Castle, and Tanjiro and Giyu fight Akaza. This time though, the fight is much easier. Tanjiro is now fast enough to keep up with both Giyu and Akaza, and whenever Giyu gets injured, Tanjiro uses reverse curse technique to heal him during the fight. Because of that, they defeat Akaza much earlier than they did in the original timeline. With Akaza defeated, Giyu has already awakened his Demon Slayer mark, and both of them immediately head to help the other Demon Slayers. The most accurate place they would end up is the Kokushibo fight. Meanwhile, the fight against Doma plays out exactly the same. Shinobu is still defeated, leaving Kanao and Inosuke to finish the fight. Now we get to Kokushibo. By the time Tanjiro and Giyu arrive, Gyomei, Sanemi, Muichiro, and Genya are already fighting Upper Moon 1. The battle is already in full swing, and everyone is taking heavy damage. That's when Tanjiro and Giyu finally arrive to help turn the tide. They see all the Hashira basically getting defeated, with only Sanemi and Gyomei still standing their ground. Muichiro is about to jump back into the fight. Even though he's missing an arm, Tanjiro quickly runs over, heals Muichiro, restores his arm with reverse curse technique, and bring him back to full strength. He also heals Genya from all of his injuries. Because of that, neither of them dies in this timeline. Now Tanjiro is fighting alongside the Hashira with the Selfless State, the Demon Slayer mark, and all of Sukuna's abilities. But here's the thing, Tanjiro is more of a support fighter during this battle because he isn't strong enough to take Kokushibo head-on like Gyomei and Sanemi. Now this team is absolutely stacked. You have Gyomei, the strongest Hashira, you have Sanemi, one of the best offensive fighters, you have Giyu with his incredible defensive water breathing, and then you have Tanjiro constantly healing everyone with reverse curse technique, almost giving them regeneration like a demon. With Genya supporting from behind using Kokushibo's flesh and blood demon art, they finally overwhelm Upper Moon 1. Tanjiro also makes sure Muichiro doesn't recklessly rush into the fight again like before, keeping an eye on him while he supports the others. Eventually, Kokushibo is defeated much easier than in the original timeline. He remembers his brother one last time, realizes he was wrong, and finally passes on. Meanwhile, everything with Doma happens exactly the same. Shinobu is still defeated after poisoning him, allowing Kanao and Inosuke to finish the fight. Then Muzan realizes Nakime is being controlled by Yushiro. He immediately kills her, but Yushiro keeps control long enough to get everyone out of the Infinity Castle and into the Sundown Countdown arc. So the only Hashira who dies during the Infinity Castle arc is Shinobu. Everyone else survives, and because of Tanjiro's reverse curse technique, they're all healed before the final battle. The only problem is that Tanjiro has to be careful. Unlike the Gojo timeline, he doesn't have the 6 eyes. That means every time he uses reverse curse technique, cleave, dismantle, or his domain expansion, he's burning through a huge amount of cursed energy, so he has to manage it carefully. Now the Demon Slayers finally face Muzan. The fight plays out almost the same as the original timeline, except the Hashira don't get overwhelmed nearly as easily because Tanjiro keeps healing them throughout the battle. Rengoku is back in the fight, Muichiro is back at full strength, Giyu, Sanemi, Gyomei, Obanai, Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Kanao are all still fighting. At one point, Tanjiro tells all the Hashira to fall back because he's about to try something. By now, everyone trusts him completely, so they immediately create some distance. Tanjiro charges Muzan alone, using cleave and dismantle to push through all of Muzan's attacks. Then he finally uses his domain expansion. For a short time, Muzan is trapped inside an endless barrage of slashes. The attacks constantly tear through his body, but Muzan's regeneration barely manages to keep up. The domain expansion doesn't last long though. By the time it ends, Tanjiro is almost completely drained of cursed energy. Luckily, sunrise is almost there, with every Hashira still alive and fighting alongside Zenitsu, Inosuke, Kanao, and Nezuko. They pin Muzan down until the sunlight finally reaches him. Muzan is defeated once and for all, and in this timeline, nobody dies during the final battle. Unfortunately, the Demon Slayer mark curse doesn't disappear after Muzan's death. That means the Hashira who awakened their marks, including Rengoku, Giyu, Mitsuri, Sanemi, and the others, would still eventually die at 25. Gyomei still passes away that same night since he was already over the age limit, just like Kokushibo said, so it's still a sad ending. But far more Demon Slayers survive than in the original story, and if you guys are wondering where Rengoku was during most of the Infinity Castle arc, Nakemi kept moving him away from the Upper Moon, which was basically her job while controlling the Infinity Castle. But anyway, I hope you guys really liked this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and make sure to go watch What If Tanjiro Had Gojo's Powers, or What If Sukuna Was in Demon Slayer, because both of those videos are really good.